Okay. It's Gabby Harris with Stage 2 Narrative. All right, let me just share my screen. All right. Hi, Stage 2. I'd just like to welcome you to our class this morning. We will be looking again at narrative and the First Fleet. So what we can see here, first of all, we are going to have a look at what we're going to be doing today. So today we're going to have a look at the structure of imaginative text. So having a look at how we're going to set one of those out when we are writing a narrative. And second of all, we're going to be looking at the topic sentence and how does it engage the reader. So what's another sentence do we know that, or another group of sentences that introduces or engages the reader at the beginning of a text?
An introduction?
At the beginning of the introduction, maybe? Or of each paragraph? Sam?
Topic, yeah.
Is it called a sizzling start?
That's the one.
Ooh.
Okay, so first of all, we are going to do some revision on what we did last week. So revision on the First Fleet. So we've got 5 quick questions, and just remembering to raise your hand for your answers. So when was the First Fleet?
Oh, was it?
Sam?
Is it 1787?
That's it.
Yes.
Who led the fleet? Does anyone remember? Sam?
Was it, Captain Arthur Phillip?
Yeah, sorry. I did ruin that one just a little bit there. Okay. How many ships sailed from Great Britain to Botany Bay, Australia in this fleet? Katie?
Was it 11?
Yep. Perfect. Okay, and what type of people were on board the First Fleet? Michelle?
Convicts.
Yeah, so there was convicts, there was officers with their families, and Marines with their families as well. So there was people of all ages that came along to Australia from England. So there was 11 ships filled with hundreds of people, almost 2,000 people, with officers and their families, the convicts and the Marines leading it. How long did it take to travel from England to Australia, like in the First Fleet? Anyone know? Have a guess?
No, I can't remember.
Was it a year?
Almost. Anyone else want to have another guess? Sam?
Is it 8 months?
252 days.
Dang.
So I'd say, yeah, nearly, like, maybe 8 months, yeah. All right. And we are all finished for the quiz. So good job, guys. You were able to remember a lot of information that we covered off last week. So thinking about the First Fleet, how do you think that it's changed our lives? What would be different if the First Fleet didn't happen? What would be different for us? Sam?
We may not even live in Australia. We may live back in England.
Yep, absolutely. What do we think, what would Australia look like if there was no First Fleet? Hey.
Maybe not as built up, like more natural.
Yeah. And there'd be different people living here. There would just probably still just be the Aboriginals. There might obviously have been another people come here since then. There might have been other discoverers, but yeah, it would look completely different. There wouldn't be any Europeans or anything like that here. So what we're going to have a look at as well today is through writing a narrative from the perspective of someone on the First Fleet. So if we have a look at this next image here, we have a picture of everyone here on the fleet, just an illustration because obviously there weren't cameras back then, but this is what it would have looked like inside one of the boats. So I've circled a little figure here, and it's a little child down sitting on the floor, and he looks pretty grumpy. So we want to have a look at today writing a narrative in his perspective. So looking at what might he be feeling and addressing that all of these people on the ship had different lives themselves. So I am going to, using our word wall that we have here, I'm going to write an introduction to a narrative, and you guys have to let me know whether you think it's interesting, whether it's engaging, and whether it's what Sam said before, whether we would classify it to be a sizzling start. So whether it would be something that engages us and excites us and hooks us into the lesson. So let's have a look. Can you all see my board?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fix that. Okay, so that as a first sentence, what does it tell us? So does it tell us any information about what we will be talking about in our introduction?
Could you read it to us, please, Gabby?
Sorry. It says, in May 1787, I and many others set sail to the new colony.
It's got a lot of like a little bit of information like that it was in 1787, but it's still not very
Accurate,
yeah,
Exciting.
still we don't know what is the colony.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all that.
So it's not giving us a whole lot of information, and it's not exciting us either. So it's not doing any of what we need it to do. So let's keep going with this one and see what else we can add to it before we try to implement a sizzling start. Okay, so in May 1787, I and many others set sail to the new colony. We have been on this ship now for 100 long days. The ship is extremely crowded and loud, and at night it is cold. they say we still have a long journey before we arrive. So do we think that this introduction, setting the scene, saying who is on the ship, do we think it's very exciting? No, it doesn't invite us in to be looking at what we want to talk about, or it's very bland and boring, isn't it? Okay, so I'm going to have a go now at writing it in a different way to see whether we can change it up a little bit. What I'll do is I might just, for time, I might just read what we've written, so then we can compare the two. So, brr, I shivered. I curled up, moving even closer to the others in the bed. I covered my ears with my hands, trying to block out the sound of hundreds of people around me talking amongst themselves. We set sail 100 long days ago, and they say there is still a long journey before we arrive in the new colony of Australia. So, with the second start, what do we feel is different to engage the audience? What do we think has been used to make it sound a bit more exciting? Sam?
You used a lot of like adjectives and like words to describe more how he was feeling more than that way, which made it a bit more engaging.
Absolutely. Do we think that this, do we think it sounds similar in the story that what was happening then in the first one? Do we think it's the same kind of story? Like, do we think it's still the same events?
Yeah.
Like it has the same facts in it.
Yeah. But is the second one just a little bit more in, like, how does the second one compare to the first?
Sorry.
Sam.
The second one, like I said before, uses a lot more emotion, and it attracts the person who's reading it more than what the other one would.
Absolutely, yep. Okay, so now we are going to take a look at our complication, which we looked at last week as the second paragraph, the second event in a narrative. So we have our introduction, our complication, and then the conclusion, which is the resolution. So we have here, we just need to have a look at comparing the two again. And for time as well, I won't write it on the board like I normally would. There was a loud noise that scared everyone on board. This was followed by a great movement of the ship. It must have been the waves. The children all cry with worry, fearing for the safety of themselves and for others. So in that first, the first couple of sentences of our complication, can we see that there was a topic sentence? So there was a loud noise that scared everyone on board. So that is setting what the actual action that's happened, but it was it exciting? Was it engaging, inviting? No. Okay, and then I'll write this one up on the board for us. For our second turn at that, to see if we can make it a little bit more exciting. Okay. So I'll read the first one again so we know what we're comparing it to. There was a loud noise that scared everyone on board. This was followed by a great movement of the ship. It must have been the waves. The children all cry with worry, fearing for their safety of themselves and others. And then we've just written up here on the board, bang, bang, crack. The ship began to roar, swaying from side to side. Children screamed for their parents, worrying, help, Mum and Dad, where are you? Do we feel as though, what's the difference between this and the first the first sentence that we had in the complication? Michelle.
Well, just the way it started with the bang, bang, crack, instantly I was like, oh, what's going on here? Like, I was excited. I wanted to read more. And then when it went on and like all of a sudden you could tell that there's a complication there. It's like he's calling out like help. So you want to know what's going on, where if his parents gone.
Yeah. So that would be the sizzling start of our next paragraph. So that would be the beginning of our complication, absolutely. But it also tells us as well what is going on. We know that there's something there that's not quite right. We don't know exactly what it is, but we know that something's not quite right, and it's communicating that with us. Do we have anything that we could put in there? Do you know, like, what other ways could we make this big sound? How else could we make it exciting if we were writing a piece of our own?
Could you do like a cartoon where you have like, you know, on like pow and bang and they have
like
the stars around them?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like an illustration.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, you could absolutely do that. So what we want to look at when we are when we're doing our own work in a couple of weeks' time is how we can make the writing and the work more engaging and more exciting, and what would we want to read about. So that's just a couple of things to keep in mind when we look at that. Does anyone have any questions at all about what we need to include in our sizzling start? Anyone? No? So what I want you guys to do, just to finish off quickly, what other ways, just get you to write down, what are the things that you have learnt from the lesson? What could you implement in your own writing? And when you're finished, pop your hands on your head. Perfect, just waiting for this in. Alrighty, Katie, what were some of the things that you have written down there?
I wrote sounds like the bang, is it crack?
Yeah.
Yeah. And people talking, so like conversation.
Yep, absolutely. What did you have written down, Sam?
I had them written down using a lot of adjectives, but also the use of, similar to what Katie said, but called onomatopoeia. So using onomatopoeia as well to make readers read what I'm writing.
Perfect. And what did you have written down, Michelle?
Well, mine was very similar to as the others have said. So talk about feelings and different sounds using dialogue. That was about it.
Perfect. Alrighty, so next lesson we'll be looking at constructing a text together, and these are the things that we'll keep in mind for then. Anyone have any more questions?
No.
Alrighty, well, thank you.